Welcome to the second episode of draft season. The Senior Bowl was this past weekend, so we're going to talk about the winners and losers. Now, I will admit I wasn't paying too close attention to the game. I had some other stuff going on, and I also saw that a lot of the prospects that I liked weren't playing in the game. But I did watch the end of the game. The American team ended up winning 22-19 on a last-second walk-off touchdown. I saw that. Last week I said that I wasn't a big fan of Jack Besh, but he really looked good the whole game, and he ended up scoring the last walk-off touchdown. And the Memphis quarterback Seth Hennigan ended up throwing that ball. Besh also, everyone was rallying around him. His brother was one of the victims from the New Orleans attacks, and every player there had a sticker on their helmet honoring him, which was really cool. And then Besh was also named the MVP of the game. Just a really cool ending of that game. But yeah, not a lot of my guys that I was fans of ended up playing. Jalen Milroe, who I dogged on last week, he he looked bad per usual. I wasn't too surprised. I was very disappointed that Tez Johnson didn't play in the game. I believe he had other things going on. Last week I was also raving about Gray Zabel, but he did not look as good as he did in practice. Sadly, he did get beat a couple times pretty badly, but I think he'll still be fine. I think he should still go in the second round. I think he'll be fine. Miami's Elijah Arroyo, the tight end prospect. He looked really good all week, and then had a really nice touchdown catch, and looked like the best tight end there, to be honest, in the game. A lot of the offensive linemen struggled, but Arizona's Jonas Savannah looked really good at right guard in the second half. But I think the winners were really on defense. Savion Jones looked really good, pressuring the quarterbacks. Speaking of quarterbacks, before I forget, Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel. He looks like he can be a fine quarterback, a fine backup in the league. He did have a lot of misses. I believe he did throw a pick. He hit a lot of checkdowns, which is fine, but I think backup is his peak. Another guy I dogged on all week, who I didn't like, is Arkansas's Landon Jackson, who's the edge. He looked really bad all week in practice, but showed up for the game. He had multiple sacks. He had a strip sack going around one of the smaller colleges' offensive linemen. Knocked the ball away from Jackson Dart. He had a really good game. So Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart, he threw a nice ball to. Well, I wouldn't say nice. It was extremely underthrown. But Besh adjusted really well and was able to haul it in. I'm probably not going to spend too much time talking about the Senior Bowl, since practices were the main thing I was interested in, and the game was a lot of the players I was interested that opted out. But the defensive line looked really good. The first score of the game ended up being on a flea flicker from Dylan Gabriel, handed off to Ollie Gordon, who tossed it back to Gabriel, and then launched it to one of my favorite prospects from the week, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. and had a really nice grab in the end zone. And then Arroyo, who we also talked about earlier, ended up getting the 2-point conversion. The other Iowa State wide receiver, Jalen Knoll, Jalen Knoll, he was named the top wide receiver for the national team squad. But in the game, he kind of looked a little disappointing to me. I think Jaden Higgins came away as the better Iowa State receiver. Knoll had a lot of drops. I thought there's a lot of balls he could have handled and taken in. That I think he could have done better. A guy who I said I liked last week, Trevor Etienne from Georgia. He was named the top running back on the American team. But overall in the Senior Bowl, offensive line struggled, which I didn't think was going to be a problem. They did have a few opt-outs, but the defensive line for both squads ended up really showing out for that game. Let's move on. Let's talk about some prospects. Let's get started let's talk about some tackles. So far, my rankings, which are very rough. They are definitely going to change through the more film I watch. But so far, I had Wyatt Millam as my best tackle because of his really good game against Abdul Carter. Then I had Marcus Mbao from Purdue, and then Texas's Kelvin Banks Jr., and who is projected in the first round. And then we have Will Campbell, who I said last week I also wasn't a fan of, tackle from LSU, who's being mocked in the first round as well. And then the Minnesota tackle, Iriante Irsary at 5, and then I have Josh Simmons, the right tackle from Ohio State, at 6. Jonah Savinia from Arizona, and then Armand Membao from Missouri, and then Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon. That's all the tackles I've watched so far. I haven't watched enough tape for this to be set in stone, but this is what I have so far. I'm sure that a lot of this is going to change all over the place. Who knows? I might watch some more Will Campbell tape and fall in love with him. I like Kelvin Banks. I think he has a lot of potential. He's a really big body and looked really agile. He got passed too many times for me. I'm gonna have to watch a lot more film. Going on to the guards. Again, still haven't watched too many guys, but from the players I have actually watched, I have Tyler Brooker from Alabama, rated as my number 1 guard. Tate Ratledge as my number 2 guard. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. I have him, originally he's a tackle, but I have him inside playing guard. He's at 3. And then Jaden Roberts, Donovan Jackson, and Luke Condra. Moving on to the edges. I've only watched 7 guys at least one full game. I have Abdul Carter as my number 1 guy from Penn State. He's my number 1 guy in the whole entire draft. I'm a really big fan. I think whatever team drafts him is going to get a superstar. I think he's going to be in the league for a long time and be able to wreak havoc on everyone. My second favorite edge is Jalen Walker, which he actually plays linebacker, but I think he's going to be a Micah Parsons type where he gets moved to edge. I think he's very raw, and I think he's going to be able to be developed to be that guy. I'd love to see him play. I'd love to see him stay in Georgia and go to the Falcons. They're in desperate need of edge help, and I think he'd definitely help that out. At number 3, who I'm kind of not feeling good about anymore, Princely Emmanuelin from Ole Miss. He he didn't really impress me in the Senior Bowl, which he didn't impress me that much in practices. He didn't impress me in the game either. I was kind of disappointed. I'll have to see more in his pro day and combine, but I'll be watching more film, see if that holds up. Then I have Nick Scouridon from Texas A&M. I watched a full game of him. He's projected to go in the first round right now. Honestly, the other Texas A&M edge has looked a lot better than him. Shamir Stewart. He really impressed me. He looked really good throughout the whole week and in the actual Senior Bowl game. And I'm just now realizing that I forgot to put Mike Green on this list. I would put Mike Green. I've watched one game of his. I watched the Ohio State game. He looked really good. They did a really good job at going away from him. But he looked very good. I'll probably have him at number 3, right behind Abdul Carter and Jalen Walker. Then at number 6, I have Michael Williams, who he is also a top 10 ranked prospect right now. I'm not too big of a fan of him. I like Jalen Walker better. They were both Georgia guys. I just didn't see too much from Michael. I think it could be better. But again, I'm still gonna have to watch more film. Then James Pierce Jr. He looked really small on film. I wasn't a fan. Well, I won't say I wasn't a fan. I think he looked okay. Again, I'm gonna have to watch more. But he looked very skinny, and was only a speed guy and didn't really have the power to get by the stronger offensive linemen he played. And then last on my list that I've watched is Landon Jackson from Arkansas. I talked about how I wasn't a big fan of him through the week, but he ended up looking very good in the actual Senior Bowl. But again, he was playing Alabama A&M guys, really small schools like that, and then winning against them. So I wouldn't take too much stock in that. Yeah, I think that's all the edges that I've watched so far. I'm really excited to watch the both Ohio State guys, JT Talamalu. I don't think I said that right. I think I said that like Palamalu, like the Troy Polamalu. No, I'm getting off track. Anyway, and then I'm also excited to watch Jack Sawyer. I've watched him just in games, but never like fully broke him down and just watch a full game of his. But I think that's all the edges. Then going to defensive tackle, it's going to be really quick. I've only watched Mason Graham and a little bit of Deontay Walker. Mason Graham, I think he's probably the second or third best prospect in the entire draft. He's being very underrated right now. I think it's because it's not the sexy pick, but I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a stud. If he falls to 10, and I'm a Bears fan, I say take him. I know we have needs other places, but you're getting one of the best players in the draft. I think he's one of the sure things that is going to be great. Now, if we go to running backs, we talked about running backs last week, but let's talk about them a little deeper. Now, I have watched 14 running backs so far. I've been really excited to watch these guys. I have Ashton Genty as my number 1. Just so fun to watch. His speed and strength his balance point is awesome. It takes like a whole team to get him down. I'm just a big fan. I'm excited to see what he can do in the pros when he doesn't have the box stacked against him on every play, and he actually has a passing attack that will take the heat off of him. At number 2, I have who I think is one of the most underrated players in the draft right now, Travion Henderson. I think he's being really underlooked. I think one of the reasons he's being underlooked is because he split carries with Quinshon Judkins. They were both Ohio State running backs. I want to say that Judkins had the bigger load throughout the season. Yeah, Judkins had 194 carries for 1,060 yards, and Travion Henderson had 50 less carries than him and only 50 less yards. So they definitely underutilized him. Travion is a real speed back who can also get you the yards when you need it. I'm extremely excited to watch him in the league. With the Bears getting Ben Johnson, I'm really hoping that he wants that David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs type. So I'd love to see us try to get that Jahmyr Gibbs type and go after Travion Henderson in the second. I think that'd be a great pickup for this team. I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch. And then at number 3, I have Jordan James. Another guy who I want to say he's projected to go in about the 5th round right now. He's very underlooked. I think he's going to be a very solid back in the league. Then at number 4, I have Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. I think he's going to be one of those guys. The more I watch him, the more I'm going to fall in love with him. Because I already have him at 4 right now. He's definitely a power back who doesn't have quite the top speed, but I think he's going to be a real game changer. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds, and supposed to run a 4.46 40. That is a beast. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Then at number 5, I have Cam Skattebo from Arizona State. Looked really good in his bowl games. He ended up taking over in that game, and everyone fell in love with him. I don't think he's going to quite go in the second. I think the peak is probably 3rd round. He is an older back, but I think whatever team grabs him will be very happy with what they get out of him. Yeah, Skattebo is 5'11" and 215 pounds. I think one of the reasons he's not going to be one of those 2nd round guys. He runs a 4.62 40 and is a lot older as a prospect. Yeah, he's 23 years old. He's a redshirt senior, which doesn't seem that old, but for running backs, their lifespans are the shortest in the NFL out of any other position. They are replaced more than any other position. But I'm happy to see that the guys like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are starting to bring the position back, and people are starting to pay guys like them, which I think is really good for that position. And then at number 6, I have Devin Neal from Kansas. He is 5'11", 215 pounds. He's a senior, so an older prospect, and then supposed to run around a 4.5 40. I thought he was a very solid back. Broke tackles very well. Was able to find the holes well. And then at number 7, I have Trevor Etienne, one of my Senior Bowl sweethearts that I liked. I was a fan of him all week. I think he's probably going to go in 4th or 5th round. I think he's going to be a steal wherever he goes. I think he's going to be a really solid back. He does have injury concerns, which does scare me. At number 8, I have Quinshon Judkins, the other Ohio State running back. I think he's going to be a good back in the league. I just don't think he's going to be anywhere near close to Travion. He was more of their bruiser, who they come in with goal line situations, which was fine. He's 6 foot, 219. I should say that I love running backs who are 5'9", 5'10", and more than 200 pounds and can run around a 4.3 40. So that's guys like Ashton Genty, Travion Henderson, and another guy on this list. Actually, he's not on this list. I think I've watched him, but not much of him. Dylan Sampson. I'll talk about him now since he's not on my chart right now. He is one of those guys. He's supposed to run a 4.35 40, which is, I think, probably the quickest out of any of the running backs in the class. But I think he's a weaker Devon Achane. He's 190 pounds, 5'11". I think I'm a big Devon Achane fan. He's the running back for the Miami Dolphins. I loved him at Texas A&M. I think Achane can be even better, but the interior of the Dolphins' offensive line is just not good at all, and it really hinders that whole offense there. If they can, I'm getting off track, but if Miami can upgrade their offensive line, I think they can be a really good team and be able to compete. Maybe not with the Bills right away. I'm still not a big fan of Tua either. I am surprised he didn't medically retire. Actually, I'm not. Tua is one of those guys who plays for the love of the game, and then also his contract. But going back to Dylan Sampson, man, I got really off track there. I think he's kind of a small back, so I think he's going to struggle with breaking tackles in the league. He has great burst, but I think he's going to struggle getting tackled and breaking those. Okay, well, I'm not sure if he's declared yet, but Le'Veon Moss, I originally started watching him for his name. I mean, that's a banger name. Le'Veon, like Le'Veon Bell, and then Moss, like Randy Moss. That's great. But I wanted to like him a lot more than I did, but I thought he was okay. I think he can be an okay back. These rankings are probably going to change so much in the next couple of months. I'll be updating it on this show. Then at number 10, I have Damian Martinez. He's one of those running backs who played in the Senior Bowl. He is another one of the power backs. I talked about him a little bit last week. 6 foot, 232 pounds, so a big boy. He's going to be your bowling ball. He's supposed to run a slower 40 time of 4.55. But I think he can be a great rotational power back. And then at number 11 I have Ollie Gordon, who 6'2", so really tall for a running back. I'm not a fan of running backs taller than 6 foot. Obviously, there's anomalies like Derrick Henry. He's a great running back, but usually I'm not a fan of running backs over 6 foot. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, and is supposed to run a 4.45. He was very disappointing on film for me. I've only watched 1 or 2 of his games, but he's been very disappointing for me. At number 12, I have a guy who is ranked probably top 3 in pretty much everything he's played against, or in everything I've seen, but I just don't really see the hype. I'm probably going to have to watch more of him, but that is Iowa running back Caleb Johnson. He's 6 foot, 225 pounds. As a junior, he ran for 1,537 yards, so one of the best yardage in the league. I believe only trailing Genty this year. No, I'm way off. He finished 7th in the rankings in rushing yards. I mean, behind guys like Genty, Scadaboo, and Marvin Hampton. He, like I said, he's 6 foot and then runs a 4.5 40 time. But I have seen highlights of him where he's breaking tackles very well. Just the overall game, I just wasn't a very big fan of. he's probably going to be one of those guys. The more I watch him, the more I'm going to be like, okay, he can be a good guy in the league. But on to the next guy, and that would be, we're getting real deep in some names here. Ulysses Bentley the fourth. He is a guy who I think is going to be a good, nice rotational back. He is an older prospect. He's 24 years old. He's 5'10", 201 pounds. So my preferred running back build. He was the running back for Ole Miss this year. He ended up running for not that many yards. He was one of those split carry backs. He ran for 419 yards. But I think he can be a running back who can have a nice career as a backup. He probably won't be in the league for too long, but I think he can be available as an undrafted free agent or a late round guy. And then last, I have Tutton Byerschul, who the first guy who I was like, not a big fan. I was excited to watch this guy, given that he fits my build, my perfect build. Well, not quite. He's 5'11" and then more than 200 pounds, 209 pounds, and then runs a 4.3 240. He's a track star type guy who converted to running back, but does not quite have the ability to break tackles like you'd want in an NFL back. So that's why I have him so low on the list, and that is the last running back that I've watched. Let's go to wide receivers. I've watched quite a few wide receivers, not fully. I have 16 receivers ranked here. I should put. Well, before I forget, let me go back to running backs and say guys I'm excited to watch. I know I have Caleb Johnson ranked low, but I'm excited to keep watching him. I want him to prove me wrong. I'm excited to watch Taj Brooks. I've heard really good things about him. He's projected, I believe, as around a third or fourth round pick. I think I'm excited to watch him. But I think that's a lot of the guys I'm excited to watch. Raheem Sanders is another guy. He's 6 foot 4'4", 40. That's a lot of fours. And then R.J. Harvey from UCF. I'm going to watch a little bit of him. And then I think that's a lot of the guys, most of the guys I'm excited for. Now let's go to wide receiver. As I said before, going to be my hot take here. Tez Johnson. He's my number one. I love Tez Johnson. He's extremely small. I don't care. He can put on weight in the league, I'm sure. I think he'll be able to. I think his yards after catch and his just ability to separate, and on top of that, he has really good hands. But I think he can be a really great guy to have. He's extremely shifty. I'm just excited to watch him. Then number two, who is a lot of guys, number one is Ted McMillan from Arizona, 6'5", 212 pounds. He is going to be a true X receiver. He's getting comparisons to Mike Evans right now, which is a great comparison. Mike Evans is future Hall of Famer. But I was excited to watch Arizona this year. I caught a couple of their games before I started actually sitting down and watching. I was very excited to watch Noah Fafita, the quarterback there, and he looked very disappointing. But McMillan really stood out as one of the best wide receivers there. In the draft, and obviously the best at Arizona. And then at number three, I have Luther Burden. I think he's going to be he's 5'11". I think he's going to be really nice. I think he has the potential to be a wide receiver one. He looks bigger than he actually is. He's 208 pounds. He's very shifty for a guy that fast. He runs a 4.4 140. I think he's going to go late in the first round. I would be very excited if I was a team to have him on my team. I think he's a really good route runner, has really good hands, and I think he'd be a great addition to a team like the Steelers. They're a team who could use a wide receiver. Some other teams that I thought he'd look good in. I could see him going to a team maybe like the Rams, the Ravens, maybe, or maybe if he. I don't think he's going to fall that far, but I could see him falling to the Bills. I think people are really overlooking him right now, but who knows? Maybe at the combine he'll show some people up and move up into the higher positions. But there's not too many teams that need a wide receiver. Well, you could always use a really good wide receiver, but a lot of teams have other priorities. I could see maybe the Broncos at 20 going after him, but they also have more needs than just wide receiver, and they can address those in later rounds. I think the Broncos. I think they're going to be the team that picks up Tez Johnson, given that Tez Johnson is Bo Nix's adopted brother. I think that Sean Payton is going to fall in love with Tez, and given that the Bo Nix's and Tez's history, I think they're going to pick him up. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's go down the list a little more, and then at 4 we have Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Like I said, he really stole the show for me at wide receiver this week. Except for Tez Johnson, obviously. At the Senior Bowl, he really impressed me with his touchdown catches in the game and also his work in the practices. I've already talked about him enough, so let's move on to Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I remember the first game I turned on for him. Jackson Dart threw a deep ball to him and landed right in his hands, and he dropped it. And I was like, oh no. This is not going to be a fun watch. But he ended up turning it around and ended up looking like a really solid, could be a nice wide receiver too. Low-end wide receiver 1 potential. I know a lot of guys are not big fans of him. They don't see the hype. I think he can be a really solid guy. He's 6'3", so he's more of a bigger body, 210, and then he's supposed to run a 4.55 40. I think he looks faster on film than what he's supposed to run. Then at number 6 I have Emeka Egbuka. I think Emeka is going to be a great wide receiver 2. I don't think he's quite going to be a wide receiver 1. I think he's going to be a great fit wherever he goes. He's a true team player. Like at Ohio State, I know he loved blocking, which is kind of rare for a wide receiver, but those are the guys you want on your team, guys who love blocking for you. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, and then supposed to run a 4.3 40, which is blazing fast. I don't think he's going to run that fast. I could be wrong. He did struggle with some drops, but I think he's going to be a really solid wide receiver 2 in the league. Then at number 3 I have Isaiah Bond, one of the Texas receivers. I haven't watched the other Texas receiver, Matthew Golden, but I've watched Isaiah Bond so far. Another one of those small guys, 5'11", 180 pounds, supposed to run a sub 4.3 40. So I'm excited to see maybe he can get up there in the record books at the combine. He did have a couple drops in the games I've watched, but I am excited to watch a little more of him. And then at number 8, I've talked about him a little bit, but Xavier Restrepo from Miami. He's one of those guys who looked good throughout the whole week, but did have those drops that I'm not a big fan of. Your job is to catch the ball, and the drops are a no-go for me. And then Ricky White the third from UNLV. I got to watch him in his game against Boise State when I was scouting Genty, and he really impressed me. He was definitely the best. He was definitely the best player on that UNLV team. He's gonna be a Z receiver who he's gonna be a late round pick, and he's gonna be a guy you can develop into that wide receiver 2, stretch the field guy. He's great after the catch. Has good hands and is also a good blocker. So I think he's going to be a nice steal in the later rounds. And then moving on to number 11. Oh, man, great. He already declared. Never mind. Number 11, I have Ella Aomanar. I should really learn how to say these names before I try to pronounce them. He's receiver from Stanford. I thought he looked good. I think he can be a solid wide receiver 2 in the league. I'm gonna have to watch a little bit more of him. I think I watched only one game of his, so I'll have to watch more, give it a little deeper scouting report. Then Jalen Royals, who I know a lot of draft guys really like him. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, and runs a 4.38. I just didn't see it quite as much as everyone else. I could be wrong. I might have to rewatch him. I probably will rewatch him and watch some other games with him. Guys with those 4.38 speeds, they're always going to go in day 1 or day 2 of the draft, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. And then realizing I'm running out of time. Then Pat Bryant from Illinois, he was at the Senior Bowl as well. Not a big fan. He just too many drops for me. And then Zachariah Franklin. Oh, another Illinois wide receiver. He was okay. I think he's about the same as Pat Bryant, just not a big fan. Then Savion Williams from TCU. I was not a fan of at all. He's a big body guy, 6'5", 225, 4.45. Great physical he's got great physical tools, but he's got no hands. Had so many drops all over the film, and I just was not a fan of. I think next show I think I'm going to try to watch all the tight end prospects. So far I've watched the big names: Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fenton Jr., but I haven't watched guys like Gunnar Helm, and then Luke Lackley, Jake Bringstool. I'm going to have to watch more of those guys, so I'm probably going to watch a lot of tight end film this week, and I will try to report back. But thank you for listening to the second episode of draft season. Again, this has been fun. I'm looking to improve every week. If you're listening and have a way to reach out to me, reach out. Tell me what I'm doing good. Tell me what I'm doing bad. I just want to improve. But again, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you guys next week.